It's a cultural issue and a Western ideology. These are some of the words Shira Bluestein, co-owner of Acorn and Lila restaurants on Main Street, used to describe the perception workers in the restaurant industry face here in Vancouver.
I've had a lot of servers tell me and lament that their parents are complaining that they're still working at the restaurants, but that's just a cultural issue, probably in a very Western ideology.
But cultural issues aren't the only things top of mind for workers in the sector. From the COVID-19 pandemic, when less people were dining out, to soaring inflation and escalating costs, the past few years have been a difficult time for many restaurants in BC. Take a listen to Restaurants Canada West Vice President Mark von Schellwitz.
Simply because a lot of restaurants have that accumulated debt still from the pandemic, and of course interest rates have gone up, plus the cost and the reduced demand in their restaurants has forced a number of them to close. Plus you have another additional factor which isn't reflected in the bankruptcy numbers, and that's the fact that we've got a lot of landlords where leases are being renewed, and landlords are just asking for these exorbitant increases in rent, which a lot of our restaurants, they may not be financially going under now, but they're saying, look, with the new thing, we just may as well shut our doors now because there's no way we can ever make a profit at these new lease rates that they're proposing. So that's really a difficult thing, especially in Vancouver with the lease costs being where they are. It's just really high.
The consequences are far-ranging for a sector that makes up a significant part of BC's economy. According to an August report from Restaurants Canada, the BC restaurant industry employs more than 196,000 people directly. The sector also generates $20 billion in revenue every year and contributes $26 billion in federal, provincial, and municipal taxes. And yet, despite this large footprint, Restaurants Canada say 50% of BC restaurants today are unprofitable. The sector also has 20,000 job vacancies. According to Dala El Chami, co-owner of the popular Middle Eastern restaurants Super Baba and Mishmish, uncertainty is the new normal.
I think the most defining thing about restaurant culture right now is volatility. I think that there's just so much going on, whether people want to talk about prices, rent, real estate, how consumers are behaving. Everything seems to be jumping up and down in not a very predictable way. And so everyone's usually on edge right now.
So what's being done to address these challenges? In June, Lana Popham, the Provincial Minister of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport, was announced as the official point of contact for the restaurant sector to work with. According to BC Restaurants and Food Services Association CEO Ian Tossinson, this move has created a new channel for businesses to communicate their concerns.
And we're finding that the politicians are saying, how can we help? Because back to that conversation we had about, they recognize the importance of in restaurants in their communities, how important they are for employment, for tourism, culture, all those different things. So they're going, boy, this is great to sort of see this all in one place here. We can kind of now look at the issues and see what we can do to help. So it's been quite effective that way. We haven't had great results yet, but it just takes government, it takes months and months to turn government just a little bit to get some results going.
But while Tossinson is hopeful about this step, there's also a big sticking point he'd like to change in the relationship.
I would say we're overregulated. Regulation is important. I mean, from a health perspective, safety perspective, employment standards, but the government tends to take it too far. And I think sometimes they recognize that we're all, that if you've got, say, 95%, 96% of really good employers, they tend to sort of focus on the 4% that are bad actors that shouldn't be in the industry. And so they bring in all this regulations up because they go, well, look what's happening here. But what's really happening here is you've got an incredible industry of people and owners that are creating a lot of social magic, if you will, in their communities. So I think they overreach.
Adding a more personal perspective to this issue of regulation, James Aranzad, co-owner of Vancouver restaurants Buffalo, Lucky Taco, and Bells and Whistles, emphasizes Tossinson's take.
Regulation is really challenging as well, too. The amount of time and expense that small businesses in hospitality and other industries have to go through to be able to get licensing on a municipal and provincial level is sometimes unbearable. and it causes us so many delays and opportunity costs as we first start these businesses, and that really needs to be fast-tracked. It's what a lot of people campaign on, and rarely do we see anything change. In fact, I think in Vancouver it's gotten worse over the course of the last 2 or 3 years.
In addition to that, Restaurants Canada say there's another issue giving businesses anxiety. In August, the federal government announced plans to cap the number of temporary foreign workers at 10% of an employer's total workforce. According to Minister Lana Popham, it's a move that would create more anxiety for BC restaurants.
There's definitely a need for workers, and if domestic workers aren't going to be stepping up into these jobs, we have to fill them. So, there's going to be a negative effect, I think, on hospitality for sure, restaurant industry jobs. There's going to be a need to fill those spots.
But regardless of the labor rules, Angus Ahn, the owner of Mainam and Fat Mao restaurants in Vancouver, says the sector faces an even greater challenge when it comes to hiring and retaining staff.
I feel like right now it's sort of gone backwards a bit. So like a lot of people are sort of see it as a stopgap, and eventually when they, like people that are sort of saving up to get into trade school to be electrician or plumbers and different things like that because it's more steady, and perhaps maybe the hours are not that attractive, right? Because you work long hours and you always work nights, so it's hard for families because a lot of people that want to start a family, it's very difficult for that to be able to not be home at night when your kids are going to bed. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different challenges. Yeah.
At the moment, Restaurants Canada and the BC RFA continue to push their 2024 Save BC Restaurants campaign in an effort to outline for government the issues facing restaurants today and the steps that can be taken to address them. For James Ironzad, these initiatives present an opportunity.
Obviously, we're short tens of thousands of hospitality jobs, as the studies show, across the country, and so we need to bring people back into the industry. And how can we make that desirable? Well, all the ways that we've discussed so far, it has to be fun. It has to be a way to make not just a basic living, but to develop a career out of it, make it fun, make it enjoyable, opportunities to advance, learn, so on and so forth. And so if we can do those things and continue to do that, and it becomes infectious, and more people around the industry, and not just in the big cities, but in the small towns can do that, then people will come, because at the end of the day, low barrier of entry, super fun thing to do, and it's social.
In the third episode in this series, we will evaluate the various private and public initiatives designed to revitalize this sector, alongside examining the innovative strategies restaurants themselves are implementing to shift the narrative.